Top of Yudal and Aleph. Just review. We're talking about Maimet Shloshton. Maimet Shloshton again is a kinyan. It's an act of acquisition, and the mechanism of how it works is you say that this item should belong to so and so in front of three people. Now, the Gemara to question whether Maimet Shloshton works specifically on possessions or also on value. Can I transfer a loan to somebody using this idea of Maimet Shloshton? I tell three people this loan that's owed to me should go to somebody else. Is that a valid kinyan or not? So Gemara has debate, and according to the Gemara wants to understand, according to the opinion that says, that it does work as a valid kinyan, sort of what's the mechanism of the kinyan? Why is it that the loan is transferred from one person to the other person? The Gemara's first attempt was that when you borrow money, it's as if you say that anyone who I give a power of attorney to could collect as well. The only problem the Gemara had with that was that they'd have to be alive at the time of the loan. The reason for that is because you can't make a condition if the fulfillment of the condition doesn't exist yet. In other words, you're paying it back to somebody who wasn't there at the time of the loan. Because at the time of the loan you couldn't have made a power of attorney to him, you can't make one now either. So the Gemara proposes a different alternative. The Gemara says, Amar of Ashi, or the bottom of the Gimel base, the last three words. Amar of Ashi. The new argument is that because the loan will be extended now, you have a new creditor, and you're changing the length. Presumably, the loan will be treated as if it's a new loan. So therefore, the debtor agrees to pay the money to the new creditor. So the Gemara here is making a huge presumption that when you do Maimet Shloshton, the money owed to the creditor now is extended. So as if you have another 30 days to pay back. But it's not the case. So Huna, the son of Nechemia, says to Rashi, to the one who made this claim, if that's the case, so there was a great Torah scholar, his name was Rav Elyashiv, but in Talmud, the children of Elyashiv were very difficult, very powerful people, and very difficult people to get along with. So these sons of Elyashiv, the kapsi v'shakil altar, they don't give if you give them a loan through Maimet Shloshton, they're collecting it immediately. They're not waiting around. So you'll tell me that they don't acquire a loan through Maimet Shloshton because they don't give additional time. And if you'll say Hachanami, that maybe indeed they don't acquire it, if that's the case, then all of a sudden Maimet Shloshton doesn't really work as a kinyan anymore because it depends on the person. If the person is willing to give you a little bit longer to pay up, then the kinyan works, and if not, it won't work. The Gemara does not prefer that option. So the Gemara gives a final answer. So the Trumar Sitra says, these three things the rabbis decreed, and they said it works without any reason. In other words, the reason is not going to change the modality of how it works. This is it. Treat it as if it's the law. Now you want to know the reason for it? We can discuss the reason a separate time. But whatever the reason is, it's not going to impact the fact that this is the law, period. And Maimet Shloshton is one of them. Maimet Shloshton is a rabbinical enactment that this type of act of acquisition transfers a debt from one person to the other person. Now you have a question: how does it work? That's beside the point. The rabbi said, "This is it. This is how. This is what happens." We can discuss the reasons. We can discuss the reasons a separate time, but then the reasons won't impact how it works. Okay, so there are three things that are like this. What is it? One of them is this idea called Maimon Shloshtan. V'idach, another example, the Amar of Yehudah, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehudah says in the name of Shmuel, if somebody gifts all of his possessions to his wife. By the way, under Jewish law, a wife does not inherit. Right? A wife does not inherit. The husband's assets go to the sons. If there's no sons, they go to the daughters. If there's no daughters, it goes to the father. Father's not around, the father's inheritors inherit him. If there's no inheritors to the father, it goes up a generation, it goes to the grandfather. It's the grandfather. If the grandfather is no longer alive, it's the grandfather's inheritors that would inherit this guy. Okay. Anyway, the woman is not an inheritor. By the way, a woman does have certain things that she gets. She's allowed to stay in the house. She's allowed to continue to live off the assets. That's called Tanai Ksuba. That's what he promised her when they got married. Okay. Okay, so now if somebody decides to give his entire inheritance to his wife, according to the opinion of Shmuel, le'otza el apotropia, he just basically appointed her to be the custodian. The rabbis decreed that presumably when he gives everything to his wife, he doesn't actually mean to give it all to his wife. What he means to do is to appoint her a custodian, and that's it. Even if you have an exception to the rule, it seems like he didn't really mean to appoint her a custodian without changing the rule itself. The Idach, and another example of this, the Amar of Chanina said, Rav Chananya said, Hamasi Isha lifnoi gadol b'bayis kanai. If somebody marries off his son to a woman in his own house, he acquires the house. This is sort of an old tradition that when your son was getting married, you build him a house, and the house that you build him would be the house that you marry him off in.
The better ones still do this in Southern Israel.
Oh, okay. There we are.
They build a house for the marriage.
So in other words, typically to get a house, you need to do an active acquisition. Getting married in the house isn't sufficient. However, because the custom was that you would build a house for your, soon to be married couple, if you marry them in the house, you wouldn't need an active acquisition. That getting married in the house is a clear indication that this belongs to them. Rav says to Rav Acha from Bardala, he says, Kaba de Murika Isli Gaboch. 1 second, what is it? Kaba de Murika. How do they translate? What's a Kaba de Murika?
The saffron in your custody.
There we are. There we are. I have a measurement of saffron in custody. Isli Gaboch. Yave Laplani. Ba'ape. 1 second. Yave Laplani. Hold on. Okay. In other words, he says to him as follows. He says, you owe me a measurement of saffron. Go give it to somebody else. And I'm telling this to you in front of somebody else so that you can't change your mind. In front of this other guy. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Let's say the other guy wasn't present. The Gemara presumes here there were 3 people. So you had Ma'amad Shloshtan, and the other guy is present, the soon-to-be creditor. So the Gemara says, let's say this Mechlal de Iboy Hadar have Matzi Hadar Bay. Evidently, if the creditor wasn't present, then he would be able to change his mind. No, because it's Ma'amad Shloshtan here. He wouldn't be able to change his mind. So why does he have to say that because the creditor is here, you can't change your mind? You couldn't change your mind regardless. So the Gemara says, you're right. The fact that I'm telling you to give it to somebody else, that cannot be changed. The Gemara says, no? Rav already said this. The Amar of Huna Amar Rav Manali B'Yad Chatzei L'Tnei L'Plein B'Mayim Shloshtan Kana. Rav already said that Maimet Shloshtan is a valid kinyan and it works for value. You can transfer a loan. So Gemara says, if it was just from there, I would think that specifically is if it's a large gift, it's transferred through the mechanism of Maimet Shloshtan. But if it's a small gift, presumably saffron wasn't that as expensive as it is today. So it's a smaller gift. So literally by b'fanav, if it shouldn't require that you make the statement in front of him. Now, 1 second. One second. Hold on. If I can borrow your Gemara for a second.
Yeah.
So the Gemara is saying is as follows, that I would think that by specifically a large gift needs to have Maimet Shloshtan, needs to have 3 people present. But it could be I can transact a small gift even without 3 people present. So the Gemara says Kamash Malava, no, but in both scenarios it requires 3 people to be present in order for Maimet Shloshtan to work. Okay. We're at the 2 dots, a little less than halfway down the page.
On
14a.
14A, halfway down.
A little less. There were these gardeners that made a calculation. So they were all they earned let's say they earned $1,000 together. They split it up. They all took $200. One of them realizes he has $205. Amrlei, they said to him, they said to him, okay, you have an extra $5, so then give it back to the guy who hired us. Evidently, instead of paying them $1,000 to 5 workers, he paid them $1,005. The economy name, they made a kinyan, and they agreed that he'll return the $5. So he started recounting the money, and then he realizes there's no extra $5. He only has 200. Also, look at my Rav Nachman. He went to front of Rav Nachman. Amarlei says to him, what should I do to you? What should I do to help you? First of all, Maimet Shloshtan works here. So you had 3 people. You announced that you were to give it back to the owner. It's Maimet Shloshtan. You made a kinyan. It belongs to him. Okay, so in other words, you have to pay the money anyway, even though there's no extra money. Amarlei Rava, so Rava says to him, Otu hai mika amarlei lo yahavna like gaboy kamar. Rava is saying like this. Rava says to Rav Nachman, hold on a second. The guy is not saying he doesn't want to give the money. He's saying that there is no extra money. There was no extra money. The whole thing was a mistake. Amarlei, he says, if it's a mistake, then kinyan b'toisu. Then the whole kinyan is all one big mistake. The kol kinyan b'tois chayzer. Since it existed, but he thought it was extra and it wasn't. Because the $5 was they clearly made a kinyan, right? But they clearly made a kinyan on $5. The only thing was that $5 was an extra. He says the whole kinyan was a mistake, and therefore kinyan b'tois chayzer goes back. Itmar we learned. Okay, 1 second. Okay, this is we're beginning right now. We're beginning a very enjoyable sugya, sort of what Talmudical classic, as you might say. Okay, and the question here is, we'll start. No reason for any introductions. Okay, Itmar. Let's see. Here, give $100 to. Let's say Reuven says, give $100 to Shimon who I owe money to. Okay, again, so Reuven borrows money from Shimon, and he tells Levi, "Here's $100. Go pay back Shimon." Got it. Reuven borrowed money from Shimon. He sends Levi to pay back the money, and he says the words "Hoylech," carry. Rav says, "Chayev ba'achariyusay." If let's say Levi loses the money, then Shimon, then Reuven will have to pay again. The imbo lachzar ein chayzer. However, let's say Shimon's halfway there, and Reuven calls him up. I'm sorry, Levi, the messenger, is halfway to Shimon, and Reuven calls him up and says, "Hold on a second, I really need the money this month. I'll pay. I'm going to decide I want to pay back Shimon next month. Bring back the money." So Gemara says that's imbo lachzar ein chayzer. He cannot change his mind. We'll see why in a moment. Shmuel says, "Hold on. If you're telling me that he's still obligated to take acharayas, in other words, if the item is lost, who's responsible here? The borrower. If the borrower is responsible, so then he could still change his mind. Then he can still change his mind. So Gemara says, okay, perhaps this is the debate. The Marasovar Rav would say, Hoylech kischi dami. Hoylech means carry, means kischi. It means acquire it on behalf of. So when Reuven tells Levi, carry the money to Shimon, he's not telling him carry the money. What is he telling him? Acquire the money on his behalf. If you acquire it on the behalf of the borrower, then it belongs to the borrower. You can't change your mind. Umar Sovereign Shmuel says, carrying is not, it's not a reason to acquire the money. And therefore, if he doesn't acquire the money, he could change his mind. Samar says, no. Lloyd, everyone agrees that that you tell the guy to carry the money, that's telling him to acquire the money on the behalf of the borrower. And this is and obviously, we'll just point out it's appropriate. It's very appropriate that this is brought in our Mishnah, because our Mishnah is a very similar question. The guy brings a document on behalf of a slave, right? The Rabbanan say that slave acquires himself immediately. And Ramirez says he does not. Okay, so the Gemara says, so everyone agrees, everyone says carrying a document is and there is an implication there that you should acquire it on behalf of the borrower. Again, this is the debate. Marasavar lo amrin and migu. Marasavar amrin and migu. Okay, what does this mean? The word migu literally means since. In context, without going through the other types of migus and how they work, but in context, migu is as follows. Hold on a second. You're acquiring it on behalf of the borrower, but you're acquiring it on behalf of the lender, right? The messenger is acquiring it on behalf of the lender, but actually the borrower is still responsible in case the money is lost. Right? Reuven borrows from Shimon. Levi is the messenger. Levi acquires it on behalf of Shimon. 1 second, but Levi doesn't really acquire it on behalf of Shimon because Reuven's still responsible. So Shmuel says, look, to the extent that you're willing to hold Reuven responsible, the borrower responsible, then the messenger is not acquiring it on behalf of the lender. In other words, the idea is, since he's still responsible, therefore he could change his mind. Tiny Kav said to Rav, there's a price that supports Rav. Carry this coin, this money to somebody else, which I owe him the money. Or he says, gift the money to somebody else who give him the money because I owe him the money. So in this case, he actually borrowed money. It's very hard to use words here. Okay, in English, you borrow money and you also borrow a computer. In Talmud, you don't borrow there's two different words for this. Shayel is when you borrow a chair. Lova is when you borrow money. The difference between a she'ela and a halva is a she'ela requires the same item to be returned. If I borrow your cup, I'm expected to give back the exact same cup, not a similar cup that I bought from the store. Whereas by money, I don't give back the exact same money. That's foolish. There's no point of the loan then. Money is a loan of value. And in truth, you have to deal with Hilchos Ribos when we get there. It's a while already. But outside of Hilchos Ribos, technically speaking, I can do a halva of your cup, which would allow me to destroy your cup and pay back a new cup. Halva is an expendable item, something that's going to be spent. Whereas a she'ela is so, and the same word for she'ela is also called pikadon. Pikadon also means that I borrowed an item.
What type of watchman?
Yeah, that's separate. So watchman, the typical word pikadon is often used with a watchman. Okay, anyway, so similarly, if the guy has $100 that he did a she'ela on, he borrowed the money as a possession, not as an expendable item, and he tells him to return the item, or it's a vessel, whatever it is. He borrowed a computer or borrowed a cup. Okay, or 10 manal plenty. He said, instead of saying halach carry it, he said 10 give it. Manal plenty give the guy back his computer. In all these instances, the borrower is still responsible. However, cannot change his mind. So Gemara says, hold on a second. Kadon, you're talking about he borrowed a car, right? So Reuben borrows a car from Shimon. He sends Levi to drive the car back to Shimon. The halacha is that if you borrow a car, you're not allowed to sub-borrow it to somebody else, right? The argument is called...
Is this a loan or acquisition?
Well, what do you think if I borrow a car?
I think I better make sure my insurance is paid out.
Also true. That should be regardless of whether or not you loan it. But by the way, most insurances...
Maybe you and I think that. Maybe
most insurances cover... Most insurances cover a loan. You can loan your car according to most insurances. Some insurances, you can buy policies that don't allow you to, but most policies will allow you to. Okay. Where am I? Okay. Again, the Reuben borrows a car from Shimon. He tells Levi to drive it back. Talmudical law in general is Reuben cannot have Levi drive it back. Who knows if Levi, maybe Levi's an 18-year-old, right? Just got his license, or not, or maybe Levi's a 75-year-old.
Or an Oregonian, native-born Oregonian.
Doesn't make a difference. The halacha is there's a general rule. Just because I loaned you my car doesn't mean I'm comfortable with you giving it out with somebody else. And the general rule is you're not allowed to. If you borrow a car, you have to get specific permission for all the drivers. And the same thing is true really of any, you borrow a cup or a computer or table, the same thing would be true. So hold on. So how are you allowed to give it to a third guy to pay back? You should say to him, so that rule only applies when you presume that otherwise you give it back. So Reuben's a good guy. Shimon is confident that Reuben's going to drive his car back to him. However, let's say Reuben is a known, they call it car boosting. Yeah, he's a thief. So then there's no argument because he doesn't think he's going to get his car back. To the contrary, almost anybody is a better custodian than Reuben. Right? Reuben's going to steal his car.
What's that new website where you pass the car out?
Turo.
That's your insurance doesn't cover you. A lot of insurances don't cover.
Depends insurance. Some do, some don't.
I tried to
I call my insurance. They do.
They
Okay.
do?
Yeah, but anyway,
What are you supposed to do?
Safeco. Okay, Amar Rav Zera holds the conference. So Rav Zera says, in other words, we're talking about a scenario where Reuven, the borrower, is a known liar. So if he's a known liar, obviously the guy is very excited to get back his item, no matter which way he gets it back. And he wouldn't mind even if somebody else, even if an 18-year-old drives it back, he'd rather that than have a known car thief. Okay, the Gemara has a few stories here. Rav Sheshes apparently had a coat business. He would sell coats, and he had a line of credit that to some coat dealer in Mechuzah. He says to Rav Yosef Bar Chama, when you get to Mechuzah, I want you to call the line of credit, and I want payment. Fine. So he came to Mechuzah. He went to the business. He says, who was it? It's Rav Sheshes is calling his line of credit. He wants you to pay up. So he said, sure, here's the pile of money. So they said to him, they were smart people, these people in Mechuzah. They said, hold on a second. You're traveling back to wherever Rav Sheshes lived. It's a journey. Maybe highwaymen are going to attack you, and then we'll have to pay back again because we're responsible. So here's what we want to do. We want you to make a kinyan that you're accepting responsibility of the journey, not us. He said, okay, we're in, we'll make a kinyan. I'll take responsibility. Eventually he went, as soon as they said we'll make a kinyan, they could not find Rav Yosef anymore. Rav Yosef disappeared. He refused to actually do the kinyan. He said he would do it, but then he hid. He didn't want to do it. When he came back to Rav Sheshes, he said you were smart by not making the kinyan. In general, a borrower to a lender is considered at some level a slave. So you would have accepted needless responsibility. You're not obligated to accept the responsibility. There was no reason for you to accept responsibility. So you save yourself from that sort of indebtedness, which is a good thing. Alternatively, a different variation of the same Gemara is Lishnachrina, Shaper Avdis, Eved Loy V'Lish Malva. It's good that you didn't make a kinyan because those people that have the line of credit, the people of Mechuzah, the guy who has the coat store in Mechuzah, he is my slave because he borrowed money.
What?
Effectively, he borrowed money from me. So therefore, there's no reason for you to accept responsibility on his behalf. Now we have a very interesting story. Rav Achi bar Yashia had a vessel of silver by somebody in Ahardoi. So he found two scholars, Amr Lahula of Destoi ben Rabbi Yanai, Rav Yosi ben Rav Kippur. So you have Rav Destoi and Rav Yosi that are traveling there to Nahardoi. And he says to them, when you're coming back, bring me my silver vessel. Amrlei, they said to him, Nikni minaychu. 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, they went. Yavin, they gave them the vessel. Amr lahus, they said to them, Nikni minaychu. Go ahead and make a kinyan. Amri lahu. So Rav Yosi and Rav Destoi said, Loy, we're not making the kinyan. We're not accepting responsibility. Amri lahu. So the people, so they said, if that's the case, ahad give it back to us. We're not giving it to you. Rav Destoi bar Rabbi Yanai Amar lahu in. Rav Destoi said, okay, I'll give it back to you. Rav Yosi bar Kippur Amar lahu loy. Rav Yosi bar Kippur said, no, I'm not giving it back to you. So how become a tzaralai? So they started beating him up. So they started beating up Rav Yosi. Amar lei. So Rav Yosi turns to Rav Destoi. He says, "Chazi mar hechi kafed lahu." So he says to Rav Yosi, he says to Rav Destoi, he says, "You see how they're beating me up?" Amar lahu, he says, "You're right. Tav ramalei. They should continue to beat you." So Gemara says, "Ki asel gavei." When they got back, yes, and they got back to the house of Rav Achi. Amar lei. So Rav Yosi says to Rav Achi, "Chazi mar le mistaya delay sayan." He says, "Listen here." He says, this fellow Rav Destoi that you sent along with me, not only is he not helping me, he told him to continue to beat me up. This is what a chutzpah. So Rav Achi says to Rav Destoi, why did you encourage him to beat him up? These people, they are big people, the Kaivan Amma, they have these huge hats. And they speak with tremendous amount of haughtiness. And these are their names. They have these names, and if they say that they're going to put you in prison, then they put those people in prison. If they tell them, if they tell people to kill, and they kill. They're mafia people. Ilu Hargo is to stay. Let's say they would have killed me. Minas Liane Ababar Kamaisi, who would have given another son like me to my father? In other words, I was fearful for my life in these mafiosas. So Rav Achi says to him, Amar Leis, he says to him, B'nai Adam halol kroy from the Malchsen, are these mafiosas close to the king? Amar Leis, and he said, yes, they are. So he says, Yesh Lahem Sudim Upredim Sharotz Nachraim. He says, do they have horses and mules that run after them? Amar Leis, he said, yes. Amar Leis Hachi Shab Rapis. He says, if that's the case, he did the right thing. You were not obligated to mess with the mafia people, and therefore you did not have to. You didn't have to, be firm in your position for such people. Okay, let's continue.
This is my wife's office at college.
Halach mana leploni. Halach bikshu v'lo matzim. Reuven says to Shimon, go give the money to Levi. He goes to Levi and he can't find Levi. Panichada, according to one version, Yachsur l'Mashalach, he give it back to Reuven, the one who sent the money. V'tanya idach, the second version is Liyarshe Mishta Nishtachalei. You give it to the people, you give it to Levi's sons, Levi's inheritors. So Gemara says, let's say this is the debate. The Maratzav, according to one opinion, Hailach Kaschri, sending the gift is like telling him to acquire it on his behalf. So effectively, Shimon acquired it on Levi's behalf. If Levi's dead, then Levi's kids get it. The other opinion says no, carrying an item is not an imperative to acquire it, and therefore the money still belongs to Reuven. And if Levi's dead, the money goes back to Reuven. That's the debate. No. Rabbi Mamal says everyone agrees that carrying the money is not an imperative to acquire it. For like Hashem, it's not difficult. Depends if the sender, Reuven, was deathly ill or if he was healthy. If he was healthy, then what happens? Then we presume that he meant to give it to Levi. If Levi's dead, it goes back to him. However, if he was a shchiv mirah, he was on his deathbed, a shchiv mirah says give it to somebody else, it's as if he acquires it immediately. And therefore, immediately it's given to Levi. If Levi's dead, then his kids get it. That's sort of, the two opinions are dependent on whether or not the person was healthy or terminally deathly ill. Rav Zvid says another possibility. It could be that both scenarios are talking about a shchiv mirah. The question here is, when did Levi die? At the moment that Reuven gave the money to Shimon, was Levi still alive or not? In other words, of course, if Reuven is deathly ill. Reuven says, give it to Levi. It's as if it belongs to Levi, if Levi is alive. If Levi's dead, then Reuven never intended on giving it to Levi's kids. Even though Reuven's a shchiv mirah, he's deathly ill. And therefore it goes back to Reuven. You get it together?
Yeah.
Papa says another possibility. Both possibilities both scenarios are talking about a healthy person. We're talking about a healthy person, and therefore the gift doesn't take place until it's actually given over. Depends who died first. If Levi dies when Reuven's still alive, so then it goes back to Reuven. If Reuven dies when Levi is still alive, then it goes to Levi's inheritors. Okay. Next Gemara is one long chunk of Gemara till the end of the parak, and I do not want to review this twice.
You don't want to.
I don't want to have to review it in the middle because it's really, you really have to just pound right through it. So we don't have time. We'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow. It's not a difficult Gemara, but there's just 5 opinions, so it makes it a little more complicated keeping track of all the opinions. Okay. Have a great day.
Sure, I think it's great.